Welcome to Business Talks. I'm Kent Adams, and we continue with part two with the folks, the great folks. We have a variety of ages here and experience from Independent Wealth Connections. I happen to notice that you brought some mugs today. Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you. We've been mugged again.
Yes.
That happens a lot around here. Don Morgan, you want to introduce your two folks here?
Yeah, we've got a phenomenal bench in our firm, and on my left is Dick Branch, certified financial planner, phenomenal addition to the team. To his left is Charlie Carr, chartered retirement plan consultant. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Counselor? Counselor. So
All these titles,
Consultant, counselor.
and I love it today. Everyone has
Yes.
letters after their names.
Right.
And some of them have multiple letters. And I'm going,
Yes.
I don't know what that means. That doesn't mean anything
Means
to
we
me.
went to school for something.
For
That's right.
something,
That's
yeah,
right.
and you passed something.
That's right.
Right. We won't go back to high school or college and see how you did then, okay? In part one, we talked about history.
Right.
And we talked about from about 1800 to 2015, 2016. Here, as we record this in July of 2016, we're going to spend the next 25 minutes talking about what the future holds and what's happening now. And it's different than it was. And I'm thinking maybe one of the most perfect examples of that is the E.F. Hutton commercial of a few years ago. And that kind of set the story, if you will, of how we looked at our financial advisors. We called them brokers, we called them insurance people, we called them whatever. And it's changed. So let's first look at that, and then let's come talk about where things have come and where they're going, okay?
Great.
Let's take a look.
Now that looks like a very interesting situation. My broker's really enthusiastic about it. What does your broker say?
Well, my broker is E.F. Hutton, and E.F. Hutton says, when E.F. Hutton talks, people listen.
Well, the one thing I think they forgot to say was fasten your seatbelts, get back in your seats. But in those days there was no TSA, and you could get on an airplane in a reasonable period of time, and all that goes with it.
you notice all the neckties they wore too?
Oh, yes. Well, some of us still wear neckties. And you were asking me as you came in today, well, where's your tie can? I gave them all up about 4 or 5 years ago. And, you know, when you're retired, you can do those things.
That's right.
Although I have the feeling you'll wear a tie in retirement. You're just the kind of person
I
that
might.
You
I
might
just
do
might.
that. Let's move from ties to winning here. And part of that winning is selecting the right people and the changing environment. And by that I mean the roles of what you do today
Right.
compared to what your counterparts, and maybe in some cases what you did 30, 37 years ago. And so you're probably a really good example of seeing that evolution during that period of time. And Don as well. Charlie, you're just kind of the newbie here, and look at everything in the less than the last 10 years.
That's
for
right.
the most part.
That's right.
And so I think you bring a current perspective and probably ask some questions of these guys every so often too, don't
Every
you?
so often, I'm lucky to be in the position that I am.
Yeah, great. Let's talk about what are some of those changing roles, because it was that before. Execute an order, take care of it.
Well, and know something.
And then, but I need to study it and all that goes with that for days and weeks and so forth. And maybe I get back to you in a timely manner, but most likely not, because you then follow up, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It happened. So during the 70s, when that ad was done, the first thing I think that's important to remember is there was no competition between brokers on fees. Everyone charged a fixed commission rate, and it was against the rules to give you a break on the commission.
Okay.
And so the perception of I know something that you might not know is the main reason people came to one broker versus another.
Okay.
The
So it was important to push that that knowledge base out there so that I would pick you versus you.
Well, it
kind
was
of
the
thing.
it was the differentiator, because if everybody has the same commodity and basically gets the same fee for that commodity, the service you provide, the way that you differentiated yourself was the knowledge that you have, and were you smarter than the other guys? Could
Right.
you do more research than they could? And that's the way it was, 30 years ago. That commercial, by the way, probably is at least 30 years old.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And it's one of the best known taglines in our industry, though.
Yes.
When
Very smart for the time.
When
Very.
competition started, which was May 1st of 1975, the discount brokerage industry exploded. They were everywhere. And all of a sudden we had to compete as an industry. And some things happened that were fascinating. In hindsight, very predictable. One of the first things that happened is computers started becoming ubiquitous.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing that happened is the old partnership model, which was a very slow capital build model, gave way to the corporate model so that the firms could raise the money to compete.
Okay.
And as they did that, we slowly moved from selling stocks to selling portfolios and even asset allocation. We became very good at the art and science of asset allocation, meaning how much in small company stock and how much in mid company stocks and how much big company stocks and international, and mix that with different kinds of bonds to come up with a flavor that did something.
Okay. Right.
But the competition kept on, and little by little by little, the news cycle changed and the internet started creeping in. And so we then moved from building portfolios and asset allocation models to doing planning. And there's been a tug of war between the planners and the transactional types, I think, since the 30s. But it really came to a head during the late 90s. And since then, we've been, to one degree or another, looked at by the general public as planners as much as anything else. And that begs the question, what is financial planning?
Yeah.
What does it mean?
Well, what is it?
Well, and even in helping to identify the what it is, the why behind that is very important, because one of the things that has happened in our industry, it's in direct relationship to what's happened in society, and we've become very much an instant gratification society.
Absolutely.
And we want everything now, and
And on our phones, our iPhones.
Oh, boy.
I mean,
we only use overnight delivery services if we're really not in a hurry
and what's a
anymore.
fax?
And
Yeah.
and so
You know?
it's Google something, or a
Right.
search engine in order to find answers. And in fact, in our industry today, people come to us. Oftentimes, that's their very first question: is not so much what's going on with them, but how do they make more money? How do they get growth? Well, they want a very quick answer. And almost always the answer has to start with planning, which is what Don was starting to talk about.
So, Dick, in the years, and Charlie, in your years of doing planning, how many people do you meet that when they come to you have everything organized the way they'd like it to be organized?
About zero. Yeah, zero.
Yeah, or not quite that many.
Might be.
Less than that. Yeah.
So let's be even more shocking. How many wealthy people have you met that didn't have a current will or trust document?
Surprisingly enough, a majority.
I would agree.
Really.
Oh yeah,
would agree.
Really?
it's fascinating how we
And
put
isn't
off.
that the first thing we learned
You would-
way back?
You would think.
I mean, you think of Prince and
Oh yeah,
recently,
yeah.
Sure.
a multi-million-dollar estate without a will.
That will.
Well, it's not going to happen to me. That
Well,
there's
Right.
we hear a lot of that.
Chief Justice Warren Burger died without a will.
Okay.
So it happens to really smart, really talented, well-trained.
I'll
the
do it
chief-
later.
Yeah.
When I get older.
When we get around
And what
to
is
it.
older
When we get
today?
around to it.
Okay.
Well, that-
I've had colleagues, fellow financial professionals
Sure.
that have confessed to me that they don't have their own estate plan in order. They don't have their own documents in order. They don't even have their portfolios.
Okay, I'm going to ask you,
as
do the three of
precise.
you?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Now, I will tell you, I'm updating mine this year
Okay.
because it's time to update it.
And how often?
About 5 years.
Okay.
D-
Okay.
But
So it's not something you need to do every year,
Nope.
unless maybe some major family changes
Major life
or
event.
Right. Right.
That's I think that reviewing it in its totality every 5 years is important, but that caveat of always a life event, a change, whether that's an actual change or just your thought process changes, what you want to do changes, you should always be looking to update it. My wife and I review our estate plan every single year. Yeah. We always take a little vacation, which is really around looking at our own financial plan and our own estate plan and what we want to do. And
good for you.
And it's sometimes it doesn't result in us changing anything, but we at least have the discussion.
You reviewed it, which is the important thing.
It's sort of like, to use the airplane analogy again, you get on an airplane and they show you how to buckle your seatbelt,
Right.
as if we haven't figured out how to buckle a seatbelt.
And how many people don't?
Well, what they've learned, though, is if you review safety procedures at the beginning of every flight, it actually improves the conduct of the passengers in an emergency.
Okay.
We don't know when emergencies are going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen. I told you that crystal ball has all the facts in the world in it.
Okay.
I just haven't figured out how to get it to work.
Okay.
So there is no
You're not a lot of help.
There is no future fact. There's an
Okay.
opinion or a set of opinions about the future. What planning doesn't do is answer the question of what's going to happen. It answers the question of what would you like to have happen.
Okay.
And how do you get ready to face the future with some certainty? By no means absolute certainty, because there is no absolute certainty.
So true.
So what is financial planning? I'd start with cash flow. And most people don't know where their cash comes from or goes to. They're probably more certain about where it comes
They know
from.
it disappears every month.
Right.
Yeah.
Like water poured onto sand.
Yeah.
Long before I was born, there was this guy named Ben Franklin who said, pay yourself first. Great advice.
Yeah.
Still great advice.
Let's talk about that just a little bit. It is great advice, but great advice unacted upon is pretty much worthless advice.
Noise. Yeah.
And one of the things that I find astonishing is, and you can see different statistics, but it's somewhere between 3 and 5% of people that reach the age of 65 in America today that have $1 million. And currently the numbers that I see indicate it's about 3%. So only 3% of the population has $1 million at age 65.
And $1 million isn't worth what it used to be worth.
Well, the scary part about that, Kent, is that a significant number, the majority of the population, has less than $100,000.
Yes.
So if they think $1 million isn't enough, try living your retirement on $100,000.
Right.
But the point that's interesting about it is that if you do a very simple calculation and determine how much money would you have to set aside per month earning, say, 7% interest at age 25. So you're out of school, you've had a couple of years to get started, and now you start
pay
saving
back some
money.
of your student loans,
And
things
the,
like that.
and the bottom line is for about $100 a month, every man, woman, and child in America today could have $1 million at age 65.
If they started right.
3% do. Why? It isn't because people don't want that. It's for a large reason they don't know how, and it really comes back to what Don just says. Most people have a tendency to take care of their obligations and take care of their family and take care of everything else first. And one of those things is instant gratification, discretionary spending.
Exactly.
And they don't use that simple thing that Ben Franklin said in Poor Richard's Almanac is
Right.
pay yourself first. If we would just take care of that and put away $100 a month, or approximately, it's actually a tad more than that, but not much, everybody could have $1 million.
Yeah.
But they don't. When we could change it today
Right, right.
and eliminate a lot of the, I guess, anxiety that a lot of people approaching retirement with not very much money and unprepared
Right.
have to deal with.
Yeah, and
Well, I was going to say that, to a point, we all look to have shelter and safety.
Right.
So we wouldn't necessarily not pay our mortgage payment, but we're not paying ourselves to have that safety and
Right.
security later in life.
well, and the other thing, if you look at the house that your parents grew up in versus the house that you own now, it's probable that your parents lived in a much smaller house growing up than you have today.
That's right.
We buy more house than we need. We buy more car. There was a time when having
Right.
a car was a luxury.
Right.
Now
We didn't have 3 cars.
or 4.
Yeah.
And
Well, I want to say I heard recently that you can get a car loan up to 84 months.
Oh, you can go over 10
Yeah.
years. I mean,
Yeah.
it's amazing. It's like a
amazing.
mortgage. And so cash flow matters.
Yes.
I'd say that's the heart of great financial
Yes.
planning is understanding your cash flow. And people don't always tell themselves the truth about where their money's going. I've had clients say, I really don't want to know. That's a bad sign. I think the second thing that you have to look at is liability management. Nobody that I know is 100% convinced that all debt is evil. But Americans borrow money at a rate that is astounding. Again, the car loan, the motorcycle loan, the boat loan, the
You get
credit
it for almost
card.
anything
All the
today.
toys.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And interest rates are low, but an interest rate that you're paying is a negative investment. And so we try and get a handle on liabilities.
Well, a culprit also is the minimum payment that you make on a credit
Yes.
card. It used to be that you could pay that card off or that debt off in a relatively short period of time. But now the minimum payment is so small because people want minimum payments.
Right.
And if you just make the minimum payment, you've now turned a $2,000 charge into a 7 or 8 year payback period.
Right, right.
And in reality, a thing that you bought on sale because you wanted the sale price,
paid for it
you
many
actually
times
end up
over.
paying double what it's
Yeah.
actually worth.
I've done that. I think most of us have at one
Right,
time or
sure.
another. After liabilities, and then each one of these takes time. It's not easy. It takes work. And that's one of the great realities is there is no silver bullet. There's no magic.
But we want it now.
No. Napoleon famously once said to his generals, you can ask for anything you want except more time. Time is not something that we can commoditize. It happens. Third thing that really becomes important with financial planning, after you take care of cash flow, after you take care of liabilities, is risk management.
Okay.
Because again, the crystal ball doesn't work.
Right.
I don't know when somebody's going to become disabled. I don't know when someone's going to die.
Right.
Don't know when their house is going to catch on fire. Don't know when they're going to have an accident or their
But
teenager.
all of these are going to have an impact.
And it happens.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
And so risk management's a big deal. So let me go back to your own experience. Charlie, you've done how many financial plans over the years?
Well, Don, I would say, in the hundreds.
Hundreds? How many people had their risk management program put together properly when you first met them?
Less than 1%.
Yeah. Dick?
I would concur, and
Yeah.
it's 10,000 plans.
Well,
probably.
and I, when the question is proposed to a client, what are they doing to protect their income?
Yeah.
It's deer in the headlights. They're like, what do you mean?
Right.
Okay.
Right. How do you
What
do
are
that?
talking about?
It's
So-
not going to happen to me.
Right.
Well, and sadly it does. And when
Yeah.
it does, it's shattering. I had one client. We went through an annual review, and he was a serial acquirer of properties. And one of the things I always do is I don't trust memory. So I said, let me see all of your insurance properties on all of your properties. And he said, well, call my assistant. She'll get that to you. And I did, and she did. And there were 3 properties that he'd bought that weren't insured. I mean, he had no insurance, no fire, no slip and fall, he owned retail stores. And I called him up and I told him, he said, it's not possible. And I said, well, okay, then your assistant didn't send me everything she had. And he said, I'll look into it. And we met a week later, and he said, I have a new insurance agent.
They didn't take care of them.
He thought that they had sent the binders. They thought they'd sent it. They didn't. And so he was, from a risk perspective, naked.
Really
to the world.
open, yes.
Yeah, and
Yes.
he could have lost millions of dollars.
Yeah.
So risk is a critical important. You'll notice cash flow, liabilities, and risk. Where's the investment? These are investments in you, not investments in things that you buy that can grow. Because if you don't get your cash flow right, you're going to sell stuff at the wrong time. If you don't get your liabilities right, you're going to sell stuff at the wrong time.
Right.
If you don't get the risk management right, something's going to go wrong, and it will. And then you're going to have to deal with it, and you're going to have to sell stuff to deal with it. And then finally, after you get those ducks in a row, then we talk about what level of investment makes sense. And I'm going to tell a very brief story. I had a client one time who worked for a big utility, and his wife worked for a big utility contractor, and their house was paid for, and their kids' college funds were overfunded. Everything they had was paid for, and all their money was in money markets and CDs. And I did their financial plan, and the husband sat there. He's an engineer.
Oh, yes.
And he says, "You're going to sell me something." And I said, "I'm not sure." He says, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Well, I've looked at everything. I don't know that you need to change anything." And he says, "Well, shouldn't I own stocks?" And I said, "Do you want to own stocks?" He said, "No, I don't trust them." I said, "Well, do you feel you need them for any reason?" He says, "No, I don't think so." And I said, "Well, I agree with you. You really don't. You've got everything set, including a great pension, a great Social Security. You don't need any more risk in your life."
Right.
And so what are you selling me? And I said, I'm not.
Is that allowed?
It is.
Oh, okay.
So,
But I think that makes a major statement in that you need to review that and need someone on the outside to ask those questions, and it may not require a change, or it may require tweaking something.
right.
Well, and the real key is that there's not a cookie cutter approach to it. It's very much unique to individuals,
Yes.
and I would make a couple of points. One is that it really needs to be in writing. There have been numerous university studies that have shown that the probability of achieving anything, if it's committed to writing a written plan, a vast majority of those are actually completed. For those that don't have a written plan, the vast majority of those goals are never achieved.
Okay.
So a written plan is appropriate. We've all had clients, and we'll ask them questions and say, "Oh, I've got that taken care of." But they can't articulate the how or the why, and in reality, they don't have it taken care of. They just don't want to
Deal with it.
To deal with it, and that we have to deal with that.
Yeah, yeah.
But so planning is really the answer to a lot of this. But having a written plan, and you don't have to go to a professional to do it. You can do it yourself. Just do it.
Right.
And if you need help, great. There's lots of people that can help you with that, and we're happy to help too. But doing it is the key thing. It doesn't matter what your intentions are if you don't actually follow through.
Yeah.
We all know that road that's paved with good intentions.
Right,
So,
exactly.
obviously, we want to do something beyond that.
Well, I think back to my father's age and his retirement planning and stocks and bonds, and he was pretty good about. I remember the stack of reports and so forth, and he took the time to go through that. Compared to today, when they want information and what you were talking about, that instant gratification, I need it now.
Yeah.
And if you're not going to give it to me, I can find out on the internet, as good or bad as that may be. And so how is that changing things? How many folks are coming in now and saying, well, I've got this idea. And you need to sit down and say, let's take a giant step backwards and look at what the plan is.
Yeah. It's, everybody's different. So often we have people come in and have specific things they want us to look at. I'm changing jobs. I want to look at, my 401k plan.
Right.
My mom passed away. What do I do with her estate? There's a lot of specific questions we get. When we get into the planning, the internet's not our enemy. It's a tool. We use it. We use it to help people. Is that your experience, Dick?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that Charlie and I work together on a lot of the plans that we do in our offices, and we have found that to a large extent, people will say one thing and they'll act like they want to get that information, but the reality is it confuses them more than anything.
Yeah.
So we help them sort through it. They can
Okay.
still do that. It's not not trying to replace anything, but on the same token,
Yeah, but you live
We
and
can
die
bring-
with it every day.
and we can bring clarity to the table,
Right.
which is, it's things like people used to have some money in the bank and they'd have a life insurance policy and they'd have a pension and a Social Security and they were fine. Today, it's so much more complex, and the pensions have gone away. Unless you work for the government, often most corporations don't have them anymore.
Right.
Now it's more self-funded, and
Yes.
you have to be putting stuff in there. But there are dozens of different options and way to do that, and which one's appropriate, and how should you do it. And it's things as simple as an IRA. There are Roth IRAs and traditional IRAs and rollovers, and people don't know the difference in terms of the taxation or how they're doing that, and which one's best. And it's just
based on where
different.
they are in life and their plan and all of that, too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Social Security is constantly changing, and it's everything from will it even exist to
Exactly.
how do we fix it to what will it be. And the truth is, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars of additional income for people in their lifetime if they just live till normal. life expectancy.
Right.
Yeah.
But there's all kinds of questions about when to take it and what's the advantages and how do you integrate all of that. And we can go on and on and on, and then it gets to investments, and it's, what's the appropriate investment or the appropriate mix of investments, and should I have international investments or just U.S. investments, and stocks and bonds and funds and alternatives, and
I'm tired already.
Just the it's just the jargon confuses people, and so having a way to put that all together and understand it, and then have a written plan that goes forward is the answer for almost everybody. And we're biased, of course, but we believe that literally every person walking the planet could benefit from a written plan.
Good. Well, we have a little less than a minute, Don. I'm going to let you kind of capture everything and close it, if you will, with what should people walk away with?
The first thing is to sit down with a professional and craft a plan. And if they're the do-it-yourself type, sit down with a pen and paper and write out what you want to accomplish.
Okay.
Be very objective about it, be very specific about it, and then share it with someone that will hold you accountable.
Okay.
You'll do better if you have a plan. If
It's
you
that
don't,
written plan you were talking about before.
absolutely. That's the first thing I'd say.
Okay.
The second thing I'd say is that the last 200 years of history has taught us that no matter how awful it feels at the moment, it's likely to be better in the future.
Okay.
There's no way to know the future, but to the extent that I have an opinion about it, it's a very positive one.
Okay.
With speed bumps along the way.
Of course.
And there's
We
always
have that growing our own families and everything else. I mean,
Absolutely.
welcome to life.
And the last thing I'd say is that you want a team effort. You want a group of people on your side.
Okay.
I talked about Ben Franklin. He talked about a mastermind group of having really smart people around you. Some years later, Napoleon Hill wrote Think and Grow Rich, and he talked about how wealthy people have a circle of friends that they take ideas and problems to.
Right.
That's what we do. We help create a sounding board for good ideas. Love to tell you we have the answer to every problem in the world. We don't.
Well, and that's what your company name says, Independent Wealth Connections.
Connections.
And that's what I've seen in knowing you for, 5-10 years here, in that if you don't have the answer, you bring the team internally or externally to help solve that problem.
Bingo.
And move people forward. And to me, that's what's important. Is it comes down to what we're teaching a lot in schools these days, and that's teamwork.
Teamwork.
And that's really what it comes down to, doesn't it?
I'm glad we connected.
Yeah.
I would add that, and we're happy to help anybody that would genuinely like our help, even if they want to do it themselves.
Okay.
We're happy to give them some guidance and some mentorship and some
Point them in the
advice.
right direction at least.
Precisely, and get them
Okay.
going in the right track, because for us it's much more important for people to accomplish their goals in life, and if we can play a small role in that, and even just by giving them some information, we're more than happy to do that. So,
Great.
And
they
there's
can-
absolutely no cost
Okay.
to do that.
Yeah, the
Complimentary
initial consultation is
consultation.
always free.
So independentwealthconnections.com.
I like
We're
that.
happy to talk to anybody.
All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for a great couple of conversations. And if you're watching this and you have not seen part one, go watch or listen to part one. Thanks, Independent Wealth Connections, to all of you. And we'll be back next time with Business Talks.
Success. It can be measured in so many ways, but success has its price. As your wealth grows, life doesn't get simpler, it gets more complex. The more you have, the more you're exposed to losing it. Now, more than ever, you need to rethink your strategy of how to navigate through the risk and reward of wealth. That's what we do. We provide financial advice for people who want to protect and grow their money. Our reputation is built on a long track record of working with people who like to succeed. People like you. Our process is sound and solid. We define your goals, review your assets, analyze your needs, provide recommendations, implement execution, monitor and track your progress online, and work with you to refine and revise along the way. If you want to secure your financial future, let us show you how. That's our job, and we do it well.
I'm Barbara Mueller, And I'm Marty Mueller. We have gotten some amazing opportunities to design and build IMAX cameras that were going to go on the space station. We came up with a mechanism that we poured a year into, and we had to start over. The failure resulted in a camera that we got an Academy Award for.
The first shot, when you see Earth from our camera, there is no other moment like it.
Wouldn't have happened without that failure.
So how do you give a kid or even an adult the skills to go forward? The only alternative is to teach them to think, to teach them to explore, take risks, and know that they're going to fall, and they're going to fall on their next great idea.
Gizmo's a makerspace, which is a community laboratory for education and fun.
The cooperation amongst people is the most important thing that we have. And STCU is doing that, and I hope that we're doing that too.
STCU.
Here for good.